So very excited for hosting the well-known author, journalist, travel writer, Ms. Tanushree Podder today. And why am I so excited? There's one more reason why, because she was with us in our 60th episode. So it looks like really a big milestone already, right? 65 episodes
Absolutely.
just went by. And it's always a pleasure to talk to you. The book last time when we talked was The Girl in Green, Girls in Green, right? So it
Absolutely.
was amazing. And today we're going to talk about a fantastic book, which I finished only in the afternoon today. And I just loved it. I just loved it.
Thank you.
Yes. It's so
Thank you.
interesting. It's so interesting that you write in different genres. I was reading somewhere because you like the excitement of it. You don't want to get bored writing the same genres. And you've been in a pure science background, writing with no formal training in literature, but I think reading is what all has transformed your journey, right? So, and that's a big
Yes,
deal.
absolutely.
And now, with so much of reading behind and with three books turning into a web series, how are you feeling now, Tanushree? What more?
Neeta, I don't know. Firstly, let me say thanks for having me here. And it's always a pleasure to be on your show. And we had a great chat last time, and we
Yes,
talked about the girls in green. And
absolutely.
this time, of course, it's a different genre altogether.
Yes.
And I'm really looking forward to this session. And coming back to your question, since you asked how the reading factor has, shaped up my journey, let me tell you, it's all about reading, isn't it? The
Yes.
more you read, the more your mind, you know, expands its horizons, and the more you learn. And the reason why I write in different genres is the same reason, because you learn so much. Each time I'm writing a book, I do my research and I learn so much about that period, about the people, about the things that were happening. And I really enjoy that process. I think it helps me grow as a writer.
Ye- You also mentioned somewhere that one should read at least 100 books to be able to write a novel. So
Yes,
that's a very
absolutely.
important tip. That's something, maybe you said that last time on my show or wherever I heard you, because I follow you a lot. I keep on seeing all your latest developments. So perhaps there.
Thank you so much.
Coming back to this wonderful book, historical fiction, what did story of Ambapali mean to you? And why did you really decide to write about it? Because you really unveiled the untold story of these courtesans from opulence to enlightenment. It's definitely a riveting plot, which your latest book, Ambapali, that we're discussing today, explores the love, betrayal, the pursuit of inner peace. So, what inspired you to explore the story of a courtesan like Ambapali, who, in spite her social initial success, got into a chosen path of renunciation?
I think we have all grown up reading something or the other about in the form of a comic, or even Amar Chitrakatha has taken out a comic book
Hmm.
on her life, partly her life in short. And I think I was very fascinated about the story of this girl who, by virtue of being the most beautiful girl and her talents, is chosen as first the dancer, royal dancer, and then thereafter, because of political compulsions,
Right.
they decide to make her the nagarvadhu.
Yes.
Now, nagarvadhu simply meant the bride of the city, and which meant that she was just a glorified, you know, prostitute
So right.
available to anyone who could pay for her services. And that itself was so, such a horrifying thought. And in my mind, it was something about injustice that because they felt she was creating strife between the nobles, they all were seeking her attention and they were fighting amongst themselves. So the king and his entire lot of ministers decide that the best thing would be to share her. They never asked her for her opinion. They never asked her what she felt about the whole thing. It was like bartering her in a marketplace. And I was fascinated by the very thought that even in 500 BC, women were as exploited as they are today. What has changed? So, that is one point that I wanted to bring out very strongly. And in my book, I have tried to give her a very courageous image where she decides to fight against the wrongs that were carried out. And she does it. She lives life on her own terms and conditions, even to the extent when she takes on, Buddhism.
Yeah.
It was her choice when she decides to give up everything. So it was a very fascinating character in my mind. And I decided that I have to shape her up so that the world can read how, she transformed from a simple, innocent village girl
Yes.
to a very, very strong woman.
Yes. And even in 500 BC, I mean, she was what she was, despite her most pressing times. She's such a lesson for current times. I mean, such a strong lady who existed and against the worst of circumstances that you can think of, becoming a court dancer, then nagarvadhu, then having a child out of wedlock, then obviously going to Buddhism all through her life. But she stood on her own. That was the best part about her, as you mentioned.
And also, Neeta, if you see, like she uh, sort of, went through one phase of her life to the next with just her own, willpower. The support that she had was just her willpower,
Mm.
which helped her grow from, one phase to the other. And that speaks about a lot. I mean, it speaks about a liberated woman in those times.
Absolutely. You know, I've noticed that you take a lot of time in developing a story, developing a narrative. You take years at times. I've noticed one of the books you said that you took around 20 years to kind of build it up. So, but how did you really research and portray the complexities of Ambapali's character? Part of it historical, part of it perhaps fiction. Especially considering the fact that she suffered so much in the male dominated society, but stood, as we just discussed, on her own. So, how did you really bring it up, and what was the process of going through a character, writing? How much time? So, all that coming from you will be a great thing. Yeah.
One thing that hindered me maximum is that there's so little about,
Hmm.
the history of that period.
Yeah.
Nothing in written history, because those days it used to be oral, history basically. And what we have now is basically something which people have differently interpreted. So we don't know what exactly is the truth, what is the source. And for my research, I had to resort to the Jain and Buddhist tomes because there are references to her.
Yeah.
And especially, I begin with her Therigatha
Yeah.
poem, the
Yeah.
verse that, she was a poetess.
Right.
And just think of the woman who was so intelligent. And, she was one of the richest women of her time. She was even richer than the king. She
Yes.
did charity, and because people used to vie for her attention, heap gold and jewelry and everything at her door. And yet she was, untouched by all that. When she gave up everything, she was at the peak, you can say, of her beauty and her, wealth. And she chose to just give it all up because she was so influenced by Buddha. And in a way, she was sort of dejected by what she saw around her and
Hmm.
the way things happened to her.
So right. And also the fact we're talking about the charity, she was out there to help everybody. Her friend, she wanted to get her into the palace, her earlier boyfriend. So everybody, she tried to touch upon. Her father, she tried to help, but the way he was, that he didn't want to take up his daughter's uh, wealth and everything. So all that really portray of very, very strong family values, I felt. That
Yes, of course. And to think that she was not the real daughter of the gardener, no,
Yes.
whose daughter she was. She was brought up by the gardener and his wife. And also, she built a lot of temples. She, during the big battle that they had with
Hmm.
Magad, she actually went out of her way to distribute her wealth because a lot of people were deprived of their houses, they were wounded, and a whole lot of ills that follow a battle or a war. So she was there stretching her, uh, resources and giving it to them. So, in a way, she was a very nice person despite the hardship that she faced. She was not a bitter woman.
Yes, and her also the dialogues between Bhimsara and her towards the end when she really stands for Vaishali. She says, I'm not going with you. I mean, this is what you've done. The least you can do is just get away from the kingdom. In fact, she's the one who saved the kingdom. So I think
Yes,
I must say, in a very lighter tone, entirely a very, very good package of a woman, everything she had from the beginning till the end. I think a big lesson for us.
and surprisingly, despite having done all that for her own, motherland, she
Yeah.
was accused of treason and
Yes.
she was tried. And that was the saddest part for her. She
Hmm.
felt very saddened by the kind of things that happened then.
Yeah. The dynamics of power among the nobles, which plays a very, very significant part in your book. Perhaps you can discuss that how you really explored and depicted the political intrigues of that time. That played a very, very
Uh,
important role as a backdrop to the
yes,
book, and her character coming out because of these political sides too. Yeah.
actually, during those times, Lichavis were the only ones who were actually democratic.
Yes.
They had this representations and they ruled together. They chose a king, and but he was in consultation with them for every little decision that he made. And that was a democratic process that they followed. And that is why they were so wealthy and no one could beat them because of the unity factor. And that's where, the whole story lies because they started feeling that the unity is getting fragmented because of her.
Yes.
And once they are not united, any kingdom, any king could attack. And of course, Magad had its eyes on them for a long time because they were actually on the banks of Ganges. So what the riverine merchandise, the flow of trade, everything resulted from that. And also they had a lot of mines which were very rich in minerals as well as ores. So they had a prosperous kingdom because of all these factors. And these are the things that attracted the enemies. So if you come to think of it, it was a political system which was akin to the later democracies that we had in our country, with a lot of unity, the power that lied in the unity of various states, and then how they could defeat every attack on the city. So when I was researching, I was quite fascinated because I know that during those times democracy was not really very popular. Most of the kings ruled on their own. They were the rulers, the only rulers were the kings. So there was one state or country or whatever nation you say, which was democratic and really living up to the principles of democracy. So it was difficult to, sort of gather the information.
Yeah.
And it took me a lot of time and research to, build up the entire scenario and what led to the final outcome.
So how did you really? I know you just said that it was very difficult for you to put everything together, put them all in perspective. But how did you really navigate the balance between historical accuracy and the creative story writing? I mean, that's always a question I want to ask somebody who's written a historical fiction, that how do you really, really draw a balance? Because you're crafting, your main aim is to craft her journey, her character, how she's gone through all the times. And here you have some historical facts, but you have to, for the sake of the book, also put in creative, some creative storytelling, because all the history is not there. So how do you always, and do you always keep on talking that to yourself, that whether you're doing the right thing, this is how it is going to be carried, because the book is going to be there forever. So, in absence of any solid book on Ambapali, your book is going to be kind of taken as some kind of a document on the character. So how do you face such issues? How do you face that dilemma at times?
I think, Nita, when we talk about fiction and non-fiction,
Hmm.
what is the difference between fiction and non-fiction? In non-fiction, it is a reporting of the facts as they were. But then who knows what are the facts?
Yeah.
Because history keeps changing along with its rulers.
Hmm.
So it has always been a biased retelling and biased telling of history. And these were the times when there was oral history. It was not written, it was not documented. So what we get is what passed from mouth to mouth and from the Buddhist and the Jain scriptures. Now, there also there's a lot of debate because some of them say that such and such person was our follower, while the other side says, no, he was our follower. So, it's very difficult to decide which is the correct version. There can never be a correct version of a time which was recorded in such a vague manner. And you have to ultimately decide which truth appeals to you and
Yes.
what and how you're going to narrate it.
Hmm.
Yes, we all try to narrate the way we see the truth, but then who knows what is the truth? And I always maintain that nonfiction is easier to write. I have written both,
I
but
know.
I find nonfiction is easier to write because you have documents to go by. Whereas, and you might be dealing with a single aspect of that subject. Where, whereas in a fiction, you're actually dealing with a whole milieu. You're talking about the people, their dress, their culture, their celebrations, and the political scenario, everything, the cuisine.
Hmm.
So you are actually doing a whole lot of research about each factor. Like, for instance, to go to this book, I had to, really read a lot about what kind of food they ate
Right.
because there is a description
I know.
about food also from,
Along.
time to time. There is a reference. So I finally found a book which spoke about the kind of wines they had, the
Right.
alcoholic
It's called Maria.
beverages.
Maria something they mentioned, na? Wine they used to call
Uh-huh.
something.
Yes.
Yes.
So that is there because when the father goes to the tavern and he has those drinks. So, and then they themselves, when they're depressed,
Hmm.
Ambapali and a friend, they
Um,
also have some.
yeah, that's
And
an
from time
interesting
to
thing.
time, there are references. So you got to be faithful to that. And the food, what they have that time. So these little factors go into making a full book. The dress, you have to be very sure about the kind of dress and the jewelry that was prevalent during that time. So these are little factors, but when you start researching, they become an enormous, factor, and you find that you have to research each element.
So right, and the book is very engaging. As I mentioned, that I couldn't really put it down, and I mentioned to you, I need to finish the book before we do the conversation. Why? Because it was so engaging. I couldn't skip the pages. I felt that I need to complete the book and then talk to you about the whole thing. So yes, but only sometimes I feel that because we have these Western translations, some facts also might be getting lost in those translations. What do you think about?
Absolutely, absolutely. See, if you see again the Mughal history, for instance, which again I have written two books on, you'll
Hmm.
find a lot of discrepancy between the versions that are used by the foreign writers and the Indian writers. So they always, like I said, that history is interpreted uh, through the eyes of various people who give it a color, their own
Right.
color.
Yes.
So there will always be discrepancy. They'll always be there. Like how you view a thing and how
Yes.
I view a thing might differ. We may both have different point of views.
Hmm.
And we all know that the king themselves, the kings had employed the bards and the writers who used to eulogize their contribution and say this king is great and this and that. But in reality, was he so great?
Right.
Who knows that? So it's just interpretation.
So, can you perhaps maybe share any interesting anecdotes or discoveries that you made while you were writing this book about her in general? Like, for example, the concept of nagarvadhu. That's something unique. And so, are there any real facts that, yes, this concept existed at that moment of
Yes,
time?
it is there. Uh, Nagarvadhu system was there.
Mm.
And though I don't think there were too many of them, because I got across some information about the existence of the system, but I do not know of any other names. Whereas the only name I came across is Ambapali. So if you recall, there's a reference about a woman before her,
Hmm.
you remember, whose brothers immolated themselves because the sister, or the sister immolated because of her being chosen as the Nagarvadhu. And the brothers carry her, body through the streets, and there's a lot of uproar. And because of that, the system is stopped. And that is my interpretation, because there are no other names.
Hmm.
And then again, when it comes to Ambapali, it is ignited and used as a system to stop the fragmentation of that democracy. So that part is totally what I imagine it to be. Ki sometime around that period, it had been stopped and then revived again, the practice. So there will always be, gaps
Hmm.
when you are doing a book of that era, because there's so little information. So you have to fill up those gaps using sometimes your imagination, sometimes a fragment of some information you find somewhere.
So very right. So did this also happen with you? Last time you were mentioning that whenever you write a book, it's the title that you think of first. So did it
Yes,
happen?
absolutely. But in this case, there was no choice. I had to give her name. The only difference I made was that I chose to name it Ambapali instead of the more popular Amrapali.
Okay. Ambapali means that she was because born under
Same. Yeah.
migratory.
Yes.
Yes.
And also in the different text, the names that have been given to her,
Hmm.
among them you find Ambapali, Amrapali. So I had chose to call her Ambapali because I felt that was more authentic, you know. It appealed to me more.
Yes. No, the cover, the title, everything I think goes pretty well. Ambapali's journey, it really involves being propelled into the cultural center stage against her wishes, basically. She was a good dancer, but she never visualized that she's going to become a court dancer and how she's going to get prominence because also of cunningness of her teacher that we have talked about. So, but how do you explore the conflicts between the personal desires purpose and societal expectations, because this was the major thing in this book, that what she wanted to be, she never wanted to be a court dancer, but circumstances got her into this because of the society expectations. Even her father could not do anything about it, even her boyfriend could not do anything about it. So how did you explore the conflicts, because that was a major thing, how it shaped up the story of Ambapali.
See, again, it's about greed. If you
Mm.
see, the teacher is insecure
Yes.
and that makes her greedy. And she finds in Ambapali, prospect,
Mm.
a kind of, golden goose,
Mm.
and who could, make her richer, give her status, get her money, and, make her prominent. figure in the society. So she sort of propels this girl, and the father is helpless because he can't fight against the king's decision. Even the boyfriend, he's very practical. The boyfriend is very practical. He is not the kind who will, take a risk. He's not a risk taker. He's a risk averse person. And which is why she feels more betrayed, because every time she goes seeking help and says, let's get married, he doesn't want to take that step because he's scared of annoying the powerful people. And he says that you and I can't fight these strong and prominent nobles and the king. So we have to accept our fate. So these are the conflicts that she faces all through her life. Even her best friend, who later marries the boyfriend, they were all from the same gang, and he marries that girl, and she feels betrayed once again. And the father who refuses to accept her charity, or not charity, her help, her monetary help. She buys a huge mansion and wants to keep her father there so that he can be comfortable. And he feels this is tainted money. Once again, we come back to the way people feel when they are proud. They are, they have very strict sense of proportions and ethics. So the father, being very principled man, refuses to have anything to do with her money. When again she feels betrayed. So, it's a series of human emotions, right from love to revenge to jealousy and to greed. If you see, all these emotions are there in each of us to a certain degree, and in the society in general. It's a perennial thing. It's everlasting, timeless. So they existed even during that era, and that's what I wanted to bring out.
So right. And betrayal, disappointment, as you mentioned, they are universal themes. But and you have really engraved it very well, entwined it in the story lineup. So how did you ensure that these emotions resonated with readers, regardless of the historical setting? Because finally they become the main theme running through and through. See, it was not her fault. I mean, she never wanted to be a court dancer. She told her father that, please help me. He doesn't help. And when she wants to help him, he says that the money is tainted. Same goes with the boyfriend. He says also the fact that he's being practical, he also thinks that he'll not be able to provide her with so much of luxury that this.
Comfort.
So, how did you kind of, ensure that these emotions resonated? So, was it a conscious decision that, yes, you will make it also the main underlying factor shaping her character?
Yes, it was a very conscious decision because I wanted to bring out that at the end of the day, we are all human beings and we have emotions, and these are the emotions that were there. And the best way I could do is to, put those emotions, each one with a different, give, a different emotion embedded in their psyche, so that, it sort of, and if you read the book, you will always find, someone who had those kind of feelings, who has those traits. So if you see, it is timeless, it resonates. People will still behave the same way, and they will still do the same things in a different level, maybe in a different way, maybe, but yes, they'll behave in the same manner. Nothing changes.
I know from 500 BC to 2024, nothing changes. You're always at crossroads for making choices. You
Yes,
always look back, this
absolutely.
is the choice we could have made, but then life carries on and we carry on. Ultimately, the life is a collection of all your experiences. So this is how it goes.
Yes,
Another
absolutely.
another very important point, definitely, which gets me to the last question right now, is we can go on and on because it's such a wonderful book, but we have to leave something to the imagination of the readers who are going to read it. I must request everyone to definitely, I'll be posting the link of the book in the conversation in the chat in the YouTube. So you must make use of that and definitely order the book and read. Ambapali's renunciation of world pleasure definitely is a pivotal moment in the story. So can you really discuss the significance, the thematic significance behind this, that why behind this choice for a character? Why did you finally feel that this is how it happened in real time? But why did you feel that, yes, this is how it has to be ended? This is how you felt that this is where she'll finally find her peace. There's no way she could have kind of not done this.
See, we had to give a turning point.
Yes.
And when I thought of the turning point, it had to be so drastic that it sort of justified that big action on part. And
Hmm.
there were two things that happened. One is the treason trial,
Yes.
where she felt betrayed by her own country for which
Hmm.
she had done so much. And the second one was when she goes to her son after the trial, thinking, okay, at least I have my son.
Hmm.
And he decides to continue living with the Buddhists.
Yeah.
He wants to continue being there instead of accompanying her to the palace.
Hmm.
And that really shattered her illusions. And she remembered that Buddha had said that we are, beyond, we have to be beyond ties.
Hmm.
If you are tied with emotions, then you can never find nirvana. And that is where she recalls that and she decides enough is enough. And now I must choose my path.
Yes, I totally understand. And any last words on the book? And any other
No,
series coming up? Even Ambapali taking up? You're going to.
not for the moment. But
Okay.
as usual, I will say, please read this book
Yes.
because it matters so much to a writer. We work very hard trying to produce a book, and a historical book like this is a lot of labor.
Yes.
So I would really be grateful if you picked up the book and put in just a few words in the reviews, and that will be a big, big help to us.
Thank you so much for being on our platform. It is always a pleasure talking to you, and someone so committed to writing already 18 books, many more to come. And it's so nice because your enthusiasm for writing, your enjoyment for writing comes through. So the other person across the screen also wants to kind of, yes, one should keep on reading and finally writing. Thank you, and
Absolutely.
thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you once again for having me on your show. It's always a pleasure, and I'm grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I will be putting this episode on the YouTube soon. And I request everyone to please subscribe to our channel so that this episode, future episodes can reach to you.